Here we are with Felipe Criado-Boado, Director of Incipit in Spain and President of EAA. We will be doing some questions to him about his experience as both of his role in these two kind of organizations. So let's start from your national occupation in Spain. Can you please tell us which kind of research Incipit carries on, what is its mission, and if there are any research, if there is any research you are proud of, and about what you would like to tell us, which are, for example, occurring in this moment?
Well, thank you, Alessandro. Well, first of all, thank you for calling me for this interview. I feel proud to be useful whatever way to you, and I thank you, and I also send greetings to all the people in the audience. But also I thank you for this question, because that gives me the possibility to speak from my contextual basis, because at the end we all are the persons we are, depending on the context from which we come from. So let me quickly, I would say, Incipit is the Institute of Heritage Science, what belongs to the Spanish CSIC, the Spanish National Research Country. Incipit is based in Santiago de Compostela, what is interesting because we are in the far western corner of Eurasia, not only Europe, but Eurasia. And Incipit is an institute fully devoted to fundamental research, but with quite strong sense of application and sense of being useful. It's a transversal institute that actually is joined around a common research problem. And this common research problem for us is the change of heritage. So we start from how heritage becomes heritage, and we finish on the public use, on the social use of heritage. I must say that I find extremely useful to bring an institute around a common research problem, because then you can bring people from several disciplines together and to keep orientation towards specific problems, but attacking this problem from several different perspectives. So in Incipit we are together, not only archaeologists, by the way. Archaeologists are quite a huge number of Incipit members, but we are more than archaeologists. We are anthropologists, historians, soil scientists, environmentalists, even software engineers, or even cultural astronomers. We are together in Incipit. As I said, the basic research problem allows us to create union and to get a transversal interest and to get to build a cooperation between all of us, what is the really important. You also mentioned about my research. Let me quickly also to introduce myself about my own research. Well, mainly I am, and I always was, landscape archaeologist. Initially I focused, and still focus a lot, on megalithism, monumental construction. Then I came to ritual and sacred landscapes. And also because my concerns about landscape, I became very soon, very early, extremely engaged with heritage matters, with the public dimension of archaeology and heritage. My research goes also about a number of things that have to do with what we call today critical studies of heritage, or critical heritage studies. But also from a pure archaeological point of view, my research mainly was on, it still is, about symbolic landscapes. In a sense, my own research problem is space. It's about how space was thought and was built how the space is based, and spatial experience is based in the concept of space that every society has. So this is my research problem. And now I am very lucky because I am approaching this research problem from a completely different view, and a very exciting project that got to be funded by the European Research Council through the Synergy Grant calls. What is amazing, because that gives us 10 million euros to study together, to develop this project on the next 6 or 7 years. In the project, we work together, archaeologists. I am working there with Johannes Müller, who is also a prominent member of our EAA, and actually the organizer, the main organizer of the Kiel annual meeting this year. But besides us, there is also a neuroscientist specialized on visual cognition, and there is also a cognitive philosopher. And the project is what it actually is entitled Material Minds. It's about the study, the research of the interaction between cognition and materiality, between mind and objects. For this project, we will use archaeology and ethnoarchaeology materials as the best proxies to study the problem of cognition from an historic and transcultural perspective. Something, by the way, that usually neuroscience or cognitive science do not do, because they are mainly focused on a completely present and in a sense social center, prison center view. Is not the case in this project.
Okay. So let's talk about EAA now. This is your last year as EAA president, and Esther Banfi is in the process of succeeding you in the same capacity following last year's annual meeting. Would you share with us the evaluation of the association's work so far? So what do you think of how EAA has changed as became in the last years during your presidency in a way? What do you think you should be, because we are in this moment, is changing, even we know.
Well, I think that the first thing I must say is that it is a real privilege to serve the EAA in the position of president. By the way, the position of president for me is nothing to do with presidential. I just look at the president position as the first servant of the EAA. Perhaps this is more important than to keep a presidential view of the position. Well, I feel proud of serving on that position to the EAA, so much as I will feel very extremely proud of serving the EAA in whatever position as ordinary members, once the EAA comes led by Esther Banfi, whom I think will be extraordinary president for all of us. And the reason because I feel proud is because EAA is a magic organization. To my view, it's a magic organization. It's something that I said many times. It's an organization with a lot of positive energies, and also with extremely good mood. EAA style, in a sense, is recognizable all around. The best example of this are, of course, the annual meetings. Our annual meetings, once a year, continues to be intellectually provocative, very important in terms of practical achievements, but also at the same time they are enjoyable. They are a place to meet and place to be there. Actually, I would say that this is certainly a place to be. I think that many of you particularly Alessandro, will share the same view about me. So what has to be said is that in the last years, even starting before I got the president's position or the president's responsibility, EAA was and is still growing quickly. Its relevance is also increasing. Nowadays, we are one way or the other about no less than 2,500 members. And that depends also a lot depending on the place where the annual meeting is held. But nowadays, I would say that EAA has to be accustomed to the idea that it will be an organization for, in the next few years, for no less than 3,000 persons and perhaps even 3,500 members. For this reason, for this increasing, for this growing, in the last years, we have afforded a lot of strong work to improve the organization and the quality of our service to members. But I feel quite happy about how the secretariat itself and the organization becomes potentiated, bolstered this year. But moreover, EAA, I would say, is still a perfect arena to break through the limits, the divides between the different sorts of archaeological practice, and also is a perfect arena to create shared ideas and practice. That way, EAA actually managed to join archaeologists not only from the different regions of Europe, but also more important, from the different traditions of Europe and from the different dimensions of archaeological practice. Archaeology and heritage professionals, people from academia, museums, heritage archaeologists, private companies, professional sector, public and community archaeologists are all together in the EAA. What gives the EAA also a strong power to negotiate the different experience of archaeology and archaeological practice, and to create a collective intelligence about what we do in archaeology. Beyond that, or perhaps behind that, there are still some more important matters to archaeology and about EAA. And if you give me 1 minute, I will express that with a very nice example that I experienced a few years ago. Once I met in an EAA annual meeting, I met a group of very young people from different nationalities there together. Then I came to them and I asked them, why are you coming here? Because, you know, of course, for a number of people, including mainly and first of all, young people, I understand that to go to the EAA annual meeting is actually expensive, and it means a strong effort. You have to pay the excursion, the accommodation, the travels, and so on. So, of course, if these people come, you have to ask why. And later on, you have to also think how we can do better to help them. Well, the matter was that these people immediately gave me an answer that is extraordinarily significant. They said, well, we come to the EAA because here everybody hears us. Because we got everybody in the audience following what we said and interacting with us. They give us feedback. And what is someone even told, and what is more amazing is that once the session ends, you suddenly recognize that it was Christian Christiansen, or it was Esther Banfi, or it was one of the great names of European archaeologists who was talking to me in a completely ordinary way. Well, you know, Alessandro, this answer makes me especially proud of the sort of EAA of organization that EAA is. At the same time, I must say that makes me very sorry when I start thinking about the national, regional, or personal contests that this person have got. Because if they come to the EAA because this person is here, that means that this person is not here at home. And this is, and I feel extremely sorry. I'm sorry about. Moreover, just to finish quickly, I must also call attention on the fact that EAA now is also in the process of actually becoming a global entity, a global agent. So in the last years, it has been very clear also, as it was from the early beginning, that EAA was not only about European archaeology. From the many years ago, EAA is full of people from many other different countries, different than Europe. But the increasing of coming a global agent has become much more important in the last years. And so, in a sense, I would say that EAA is not about European archaeologists, or it's not about European archaeology. It's about, let me put that way, it's about to bring the best of the European values to the archaeological practice. Whatever this practice is performed, or wherever this practice is performed. This is exactly what I feel is the very importance of EAA and the European dimension of archaeology. Of course, for talking about the best of the European values, we must keep a extremely critical capacity to review the European tradition and the old imperialist tradition, the old colonial tradition of Europe, and we have to decolonize completely our thought and practice. But still, once you do there are a number of things that if Europe is not going to defend, no one in the world is going to defend.
So you mentioned the diversities inside EAA. So EAA was established to bring together Eastern and Western Europe at the beginning, but obviously then it changed, and the academic and commercial sector, as you said. So why, I must say, in your opinion, such an operation has not been successful among the same parties when it comes to individual countries? So why it is working in this, as I told you, even before this interview, is in this place of like EAA and not in the individual countries?
This is an important question, Alessandro. In a sense, we were trying to answer that for the last 25 years. I'm afraid that we will last still 20 more years to try to answer it. In a sense, it's true, and it's not true at the same time. Let me explain quickly. Well, it's totally true that many countries in Europe have not gotten yet this sort of inclusive way into archaeology that EAA promotes and that actually builds EAA itself. But still, beside that, also I could say that in many, even in these cases, you will find that a huge part of the best of the archaeological work and practice of this country actually is into the EAA. But having said that, it's totally true that some countries are doing better than others. It's totally true that, for instance, in Anglo-Saxon countries, Scandinavia, and recently in Germany, but by the way, in Germany it has been a development of the last perhaps 10, 15 years. It was not like this at the early beginning of the EAA in 95 and 94. But it's true that these countries are doing much better than many other countries, overall Eastern countries and overall Mediterranean countries. Particularly, I have to say, to look here to yours and mine country, Italy and Spain. Italy and Spain could do better. Why they don't? Well, perhaps in a sense, archaeology in this country has been and still is more traditional, is much more based on, well, the importance of the empiricist tradition of archaeology in our countries have been more important. Also, I find that in Italy or Spain, the people sometimes is still much more reluctant to open to other trends and to new trends and so on. But having said all this, let me also give you some data that are important. The total number of Italians and Spanish in the EAA goes for actually right now the 12% of the total memberships. You Italians are over 160, and Spaniards are over 140, what actually is a lot. Of course, it has nothing to compare with United Kingdom, that is almost 600. But still, besides Germany and some Scandinavian countries, Italy and Spain are still the most and well represented countries into the EAA. Something even more important, when you look at the average age of our Italian, and I would say also Spanish, because I think that here, once again, Italy and Spain goes hand by hand. What happens to Italy is quite similar to what happens to Spain, and our both countries should be actually, I think, much more aware about this. The shared problems we have, and then also about the shared capacities we have. So I refer together to Italy and Spain here. And let me say something important. If we look at the data we know, I can also tell you that the average age of our Italian and Spanish members is 43 years old. This is extremely meaningful, because in terms of what is today the world or Europe, this is very young. That means that we got there a lot of young people from Italy and Spain, a lot of students, pre-doc students, a lot of young archaeologists, a lot of early career researchers, a lot of postdocs. The real sadness is that most of these people that is performing a very dynamic and active archaeology and high quality archaeology actually are in precarious positions, are in temporal jobs, and are, of course, out of the main trends of power and academic power in archaeology. And this is something that must make us worry about.
Okay. So the last question. Once your appointment as a EAA president will end, you will most likely return just to your research institute, obviously, Incipit. Based on your experience of being both the president of EAA and the director of this research institute, would you say that in Europe coexist different archaeologists? The famous Great Divide that we were talking about, Mediterranean and Northern Europe archaeologists, for example, we had a session in, I think in Maastricht. I don't remember if it was at Maastricht or in Barcelona. But anyway, between the Great Divide between these kind of archaeologists. But before we were talking about a Great Divide between commercial and academic archaeologists. So, do you think they still coexist in our archaeologists? For example, the difference between commercial and academic archaeology. I just some days before I interviewed, for example, Cornelius Holtorf, which is working in at Grasca, which is probably one of the few examples in Europe of academic organization which tries to join the commercial sector with the academic sector, which is very interesting. It probably is working. It's very Swedish-like system and Swedish-like organization. So it works very well in that context. But probably we still need more of this experience, even different from that in the rest of Europe. So, what do you think, as based on this experience of years in this moment?
Well, it is another important question. By the way, sorry about, because I think that I am taking too long.
No, don't worry. No, it's not a problem. We have the fortune of we can use. I think it's so interesting. So it's I don't think it's a problem.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate. Well, an important question again. Yeah, the question is even more important because it's true that EAA, as I said, managed to skip the strong divides. However, these divides are still there. And even more important, there are some new divides that are arising. Traditionally, I would say that there were three big divides that one way or the other are still there and are important, perhaps in some countries much more visible than in others. The first divide was about archaeology and heritage. Well, I must say here that perhaps archaeology did quite well in relation to this divide, and except for some of our colleagues, today the interaction between archaeology as scientific research and practical practice and heritage practice is much more connected than it was in the past. So I think that the danger for this divide is still there, but we managed to avoid it. So a second important divide was, and it still is, and I'm afraid will be for a long while, the divide between academy and professional sectors. And this is something that at the end is really important. At the end is the divide between the thinkers and the diggers. What is still there. Once again, some countries did much better than others to negotiate the interaction or the crossing between these divides. But this is still there, and as Cornelius said, and is trying to do, he's completely devoted to try to overcome this divide. Another divide is north-south. What perhaps is much more important today than the western-eastern divide. I would say that the north and south divide is a divide that still makes us should make us very worried, because it's still very, very important. And even if we look at it from a bit pessimistic point of view, there is not trace, or there is not science that this divide is going to be weakened. But let me be clear about this. In this divide, the both parts have guilt. Usually, I always try to I always try to see things and problems from the perspective of what we do or what we can do, instead of what the others do to us. So in this sense, I would say that this divide is still very present, because when you come to countries as ours, Italy and Spain, many of our colleagues just prefer to keep the old-fashioned national perspective instead of discussing into what are the common language and the common topics and the common worries of the European perspectives. Having said that, it's also true that this divide, mainly from the point of view of the Anglo-Saxon world, is still very present, because put that way, we must ask our Anglo-Saxon colleagues to do better than they do in terms of knowing, hearing, reading what we do or what others do in different language and in different national traditions. There are a lot of good archaeology that is developed in different countries, and not only just in English, that for the most of the Anglo-Saxon audience is completely unknown. And this is a real pity. And by the way, the problem is even bigger, because many times I find that it's not only a matter of these people writing in English, because many times they do, and still many Anglo-Saxons are not paying attention or are not following or are not quoting this material. This is something that we must clearly says. But having said that, let me just to finish also by speaking about the potential, well, perhaps not potential, later, more, but actually actual new divides. And I find two divides, well, many of us find two divides that are very worrying, or should be very worrying for all of us. The first one that I want to refer is the divide between archaeological science and, in the broader sense, interpretive, historical, anthropological archaeology, that is archaeological narrative. Or in a sense, you could say the most human, social-oriented archaeology. This is a problem because for understandable reasons, archaeology science today are extremely prominent and powerful because they are doing extremely well in order to produce new data, new approach to problems, new answers to problems, and so on. So I understand. I even share many of the concerns and goals of archaeological science, but there are some danger there that archaeological science create a divide with the much more oriented archaeology in terms of social, cultural, and public issues. And another practical divide that is arising, and I also feel quite worried about that, is some divide between contemporary archaeology and archaeology, and the whole of archaeology. Contemporary archaeology is a field of activity that is extremely important. It's providing a number of new questions that are relevant for all of us and for our societies. But partly because it's so new, for a number of archaeologists, it's something that sometimes even they say, well, this is not archaeology at all, and it is. It is, because they are working with materials and archaeological record using archaeological methodologies. But the matter, and I will finish, the sample about contemporary archaeology also allows me to come here with a much more perhaps optimist or positive view about these divides that worries all of us. Because the example of contemporary archaeology just show us that new divides are the result of our own development and improving. So new practice, new research, new approaches bring new things that could be more or less welcome by current and all practice and practitioners. So whenever we push archaeology to do things differently and to do new things, there is a risk to create a new divide. But nothing to complain about. In a sense, this is completely logical and understandable. The only thing that should worry us is that we still have to make room for all. And that also gives me a way to finish this question, and I think to finish the interview. That is, to my view, having said all these things, my strong impression, my strong feeling is that inclusiveness and being useful are perhaps the two more important things that we can ask or we can expect. We can ask archaeologists and we can expect from archaeologists, mainly in these difficult times that we all are now facing, that are overall worrying, not only because COVID, but because the real new age is rising here. And we archaeologists have to use the best of our knowledge about the past, about the materials, about the interaction between humans and materials, about the interaction between humans and the world. We have to use all the knowledge and all the capacities we have to try to be useful in the way to negotiate and change the worrying future that we are now facing.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you to Felipe Criado-Boado, President in this moment of EIA and Director of Incipit, and see you very, very soon at Puparc Med, which Jaime Almanza Sanchez asked us to be international partner. So we will see you probably in April when the conference will be held.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much for this interview. It was very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.